Blog Talk Radio.
Greetings, the cows, Gus T Renegade, and Justice in for another program to share constructive information on racism, what it is, and how it works. Real pleasure for today's program. Legendary figure, black male who's been working diligently against the racist assault against black people, non-white people worldwide. He has authored more than 30 books, some of those, again, legendary. Black students, middle class teachers, kill them before they grow. The Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys, Volume 1, 2, and 3. List goes on and on. Just incredible body of work in an effort to replace the system of racism with a system of justice. He was generous enough to share a bit of his time with us this afternoon, and I believe we have him with us already. Our guest joining us live from the state of Illinois, Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu. Dr. Kunjufu, are you with us?
Yes, I am, Gus. How are you? It's good to hear your voice.
Thank you, sir. You as well. Real honor to have you on the program. So many of my listeners familiar with your work and appreciate your scholarship and your dedication to black people and especially black children.
And let me just quickly mention, Gus, that there's 4 volumes of Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys, and we also have a book titled Keeping Black Boys Out of Special Education. We have one titled Reducing the Black Male Dropout Rate, and my latest book was just released last week, Understanding Black Male Learning Styles. I don't know if you heard, Gus, that only 12% of African American males are proficient in reading by 8th grade. And if a boy or a student is not on grade level in reading by the end of 1st grade, they only have a 20% chance of ever reaching grade level by 12th grade.
Wow. Just to make sure I'm understanding clearly, that would seem to suggest that communication, language skills, that if you have early deficiencies in those particular areas, they are very difficult to overcome. Is that accurate?
Yes, and Gus, as you know, the precursor for prison is illiteracy. I mean, literally, we could reduce, if not eliminate, large numbers of African American males in jail if we simply taught them how to read. 90% of the inmates in jail enter jail illiterate, and 80% of the special ed students are not there because of ADD or ADHD. They're there because they have a reading deficiency. So the sooner we teach black boys how to read, the better. And I hesitated there because as much, I really regret saying that, because the real problem, Gus, is that girls mature faster than boys. And so most girls are ready to read kindergarten through 2nd grade. Not all boys are ready to read between kindergarten and 2nd grade. There's nothing wrong with them. They simply have a maturation difference. The problem is, in American schools, if you don't read at the same time as girls, then we're going to label you ADD, ADHD, and place you in special ed.
Wow. Fascinating. I wanted to make sure I spent some of the time, and I definitely understand the importance of education and especially reading, and I hope this program contributes to motivating more parents to read to their children and just more black people reading in general. I hope we bring a lot of authors on just like that, and I hope we're able to inspire more folks to read and understand the importance of reading. I definitely wanted to ask you, you've written about the assault on black males especially. I was talking with you before the program about the recent promotion, the My Princess Boy book. It's a young black male in a dress. Can you comment on what seems, at least to me, to be this growing assault and attempt to effeminize black males?
And this is sad. I mean, this is a 4-year-old boy in a dress, and the mother thinks nothing of it. I want to create an analogy between this And as you know, the Dow study, they literally drove the research and the court case of Brown versus Topeka. I mean, literally in 1954, the judge decided that African Americans needed to go to integrated or quote-unquote white schools because we did not choose dolls that looked like us. But as you know, Gus, just recently they repeated the study, and we still did not choose dolls that look like us. I mean, to this day, we still have this problem with regards to defining what is good hair or pretty eyes, which are dialectical terms. If you know what good hair is, you know what bad hair is. If you know what pretty eyes are, then you know what ugly eyes are. And it's not just something that happened historically, like the brown bag test during slavery. It's still going on today. For your listeners via the Internet, if they simply watch 106 in Park, the popular video show on BET, they could count the times they will see a dark-skinned female with short hair, fully dressed on the videos. What they will see are large numbers of light-skinned women with long hair and eyes any color but dark brown. So back to this book, My Princess Boy, this is another situation of the feminization of African American males.
Wow. What? And it seems like the parent of this child is proud. Not just she doesn't think this is a problem. She thinks this is great. That people shouldn't have a problem with this. He's being unique. There's no issue around this at all. He's not going to have any problems once he's older. This shouldn't have any sort of detrimental impact on him at all. Do you disagree?
Well, as you know, Gus, there are also some mothers who also don't have a problem with their 40-year-old son remaining in their house. And many of them don't have a problem with that because their man left and they replaced their husband with their 9-year-old, 16-year-old, now 40-year-old son. So sometimes I have to ask myself, which is worse, or which one is the most pathetic? The 40-year-old boy who can't live without her, or the 60-year-old mother who can't live without her 40-year-old son?
Wow. What suggestions would you give to help counter this attack? I have a lot of mothers who listen to this program. They're constantly looking for ideas of ways that they can strengthen their sons and prepare them for this white attack.
Well, several points. One, I have a book for mothers and fathers on raising boys. The book is Children's Friends. They need to listen to their music, and they need to monitor the amount of hours that our children are watching television or playing video games. And Gus, we're watching 38 hours of television and playing 13 hours of video games, which is ridiculous. And this ties in with the fact that on the SAT, Asians are scoring 1,600, and they study 12 hours a week. White students score 1,582, and they study 8 hours a week, and we only score 1,291, but we only study 1 hour per week, and as I mentioned, 38 hours of television, 18 hours listening to rap music, and 13 hours playing video games. Whatever you do most is what you do best.
Wow. And can you tell us your most recent book again so folks can check that out?
Yes, it's Understanding Black Male Learning Styles. And if they call our toll-free number, 800-552-1991, and mention your name, Gus, they're going to receive a 30% discount. And if they order more than one book, then it's free shipping. Or they can go to our website, African AmericanImages.com. But if they call 800-552-1991, they have to mention your name to get the discount and the free shipping.
Wow. I'm going to say that number one more time, 800-552-1991, and mention Gus. When you call in, you can get a discount and get some outstanding literature to help you arm your children, work against racism. My co-host, she is all of 11 years old, and she's also with us. Justice, if you have some questions you would like to ask Dr. Kunjufu, your line is open. Please go right ahead.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Justice. How are you?
Doing great. How did you get your name?
Well, the first name, Jawanza, means dependable, and the last name, Kunjufu, means cheerful. And when I work with this community organization in Chicago, when I first started my career, they observed my personality. In African culture, your names mean something, and you have to live up to the name. So they observed me for about a year or two, Justice, and said that I was very dependable, and they gave me the name Jawanza. And they also thought that I was very cheerful and gave me the name Kunjufu. So then I had it legally changed. So I was about 20 years of age when I had my birth name changed to Jawanza Kunjufu.
Dr. Kunjufu, why were you educated at Morgan, Illinois, and Union Graduate School?
Well, I always wanted to go to a black college, and so I was going to Illinois State. And in my junior year, I had the opportunity to participate in an exchange program at Morgan State. One of the real benefits of a black college is that they only have 12% of African-American students, but they produce 30% of African-American graduates. Now, some would say, well, it's probably easier to graduate from Howard than Harvard. Well, 75% of African-Americans who earned their graduate degrees from white colleges were undergraduates at a black college. And then I just want to quickly mention that the school that has the highest percentage of pre-med students being placed in medical school is Xavier in New Orleans. So there's really some real value in black colleges. So I went to Illinois State, Morgan State, and then I earned my doctorate at Union Graduate School. Now, Gus, I have about a minute left. Any other questions that you want to ask me?
Yes, Justice, did you have a final question you wanted to ask?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know that on the college radio program, we've talked about urban schools before. What do you mean when you say urban schools, and why are you a consultant to most urban schools?
Well, we use the word urban. We're primarily looking at schools close to large cities versus rural schools or even suburban schools. And African Americans, there's about 40 million African Americans in the U.S., and literally 90% of them are in an urban area. And so because I'm a consultant primarily to school districts with a large African American population, then that places me in that kind of urban environment.
Can I ask just one more quick question?
Of course.
What prediction do you have of how long racism, white supremacy is going to be here?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I'm glad you asked that. Let me first of all mention that if we really understand racism and white supremacy, it's a sign of insecurity. People that are secure or comfortable with differences. Only insecure people have to rationalize, because I'm different from you, then I'm better than you. So I don't allow those whites, because not all whites are racist, I don't allow those whites who are racist, who believe in white supremacy, to put their insecurity on me. If we were inferior, there would be no need to discriminate, which means that the people that are insecure, that believe in racism and white supremacy, they know if African Americans are given the same opportunities, then we succeed, that we're very competitive. That's why Jesse Jackson always says, in terms of the sports analogy, because many times there's a much fairer playing field in the 100-meter dash than in the classroom. For example, in the 100 meters, you have 8 runners. They all are in the blocks. The gun will shoot, and then they will run. It's a level playing field. Everybody starts off at the same time. It's 100 meters, and you can't cheat. Now, that's a little different from our school system, where in our schools, you have some school districts where they allocate $30,000 plus per child, and some other school districts where they allocate $6,000 to $10,000 per child. There are some schools where every teacher has a master's plus, and every student in the school has a computer. There are some other schools where 40% of the teachers are not certified to teach, especially math and science, and there's only one computer in the entire school. That is not a level playing field. So I repeat, the people that really promote racism and white supremacy are very clear that we are not inferior, and they had to create a system to discriminate because they were fearful that with a level playing field that they would lose.
Just so I can be clear to Gus, myself, and the listeners, you said not all whites are racist. Is that correct?
No, that's correct. I mean, even during slavery, there were some whites who fought against slavery. And there's a distinction, as you know, between being racist and having a prejudice. There are African Americans who can be prejudiced, but in order to be racist, you not only have to have the prejudice, you have to have the ability to control the institutions to execute your prejudice.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. The web address, again, for folks, if you want to go and check out, get more information, AfricanAmericanImages.com. You can go to that website. You can get more information about Dr. Kunjufu. The number, again, if you want to call to get books, 800-552-1991. Thank you so much. I know you are super busy. Thank you so much for sharing a bit of your Thursday afternoon with us, Dr. Kunjufu.
Oh, thank you, Gus. Keep up the good work.
I'm going to try.
You're doing a fantastic job.
I hope so. Thank you so much, sir, and continue the excellent work. We'll keep reading.
All right.
Be well.
Bye.
Context of White Supremacy. I did put it in the description, brief, but he was here. I was initially thinking that we might not be able to do the program because sometimes it takes, 20 minutes just to get through the definition of white supremacy alone, much less getting to the actual program. But seeing as we're broadcasting every day for this month as our fundraiser, feel like, hey, get an opportunity to hear 20 minutes of Dr. Kunjufu. We should take it. I think he had some interesting things to share. Justice, what did you think about Dr. Kunjufu and what he shared with us?
I hope the listeners caught that he said not all whites are racist, and I think that was really interesting because I've said it before that if you're white, you're racist, and so, yeah.
That is quite common. I think most non-white people, at least it's been my experience, most non-white people do not think that all white people are racist. I believe that's even in the code book. Mr. Fuller advises that, all white people are not racist. I think he says that over and over again, just that all of the racists are white. So I don't agree, Gus T Renegade. That is not my perspective, but certainly VGQ, everybody can have their own perspective. He certainly has put in his time and energy. I'm not, talking bad about him. He's authored over 30 books, and I think a lot of people have found his work to be very constructive. So not talking bad, just one particular thing that I do not agree with. Apparently Justice does not either. And Mr. Fuller, I don't agree with Mr. Fuller one either, but no biggie. I did agree with a lot of his other information about the importance of reading. Very important. Think he had some great information about the correlation between that deficit. I think we touched on that before. The critical period that came up in 2009. If you do not get those language skills up to par early on, you will suffer for the remainder of your time on the planet. That has come up before, and I think that has a lot of significance for a group of people who were not allowed to read under penalty of death not that long ago. Just a thought. I'm going to take a quick commercial break. If you all have, matter of fact, I'm not going to take callers until a little bit later. I'm going to take a quick commercial break. We'll come back. We have other things to share on the program, so we'll be right back. Context of White Supremacy.
Is racism hurting you? On issues of race, are you unable to speak, think, and act with clarity and confidence? Are you tired of laughing when nothing is funny, smiling when you are not happy, agreeing when you really disagree? At counterracism.com, you can learn specific strategies and techniques to counter the behaviors of the people who practice racism in all areas of activity, using words correctly, following counter-racist logic, even counter-racist science projects designed to reveal what racism is, how it works, and how to counter it. The open-source code writing format allows you to pick and choose from a variety of counter-racist suggestions so you can produce the code that works for you. Stop by counterracism.com today and help replace racism with justice.
That's counter-racism.com.
Our people are very serious about not being very serious. Meanwhile, white people are very serious about playing hardball against us. And this hardball is called genocide.
Context of white supremacy. I'm thinking this is such a drastic change from the way the program started out. We had all white people on, and now we have more non-white people on. Just a little difference. I guess, that difference plays out. Comments like if someone were to come on this program and say that they don't think all white people are racist, if it was a white person who made that comment, I would ask them, can you please point out which white people are not racist? I would like photographs, names, as much information as possible, and how you determined that this white person is most definitely not a racist. That's the question that I would ask. If a non-white person makes that statement, I just, whatever. BGQ, say whatever you want. I'm not going to try to argue with another non-white person about whether or not this white person is racist. That's not a constructive use of my time, and I found it leads to conflict. Justice, did you have anything you wanted to share?
Yes. Earlier you said that he published over 30 books. I know the exact amount. What I've looked up on Okay, now what's the website again?
You said it's AfricanAmericanImages.com. It's in the description, AfricanAmericanImages.com.
Okay. I think it said 33 books.
Are you done? Is that all you wanted to share?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think you are correct with the specific number, but yeah, he has written a lot of material. I mean, he's been doing this work for quite some time, which is why I thought, even 15 minutes, it's kind of cool for folks to be able to say that they heard Dr. Kunjufu. I never thought I'd be chatting with him, but yeah, that's just a subtle difference, in having a white person on the program as opposed to a non-white person. We will be going back to where things started with white people. We'll have a lot of white people coming on the program for the end of January. We have a white person coming on the program tomorrow, Terry Kelleher. I think I'm butchering his last name, but he'll correct me tomorrow. Kelleher, I believe. He is a white man who adopted a black male child. He's written articles. He'll be on the program tomorrow afternoon, doing a couple afternoon shows. I don't really like these afternoon shows as much. I prefer to do them later in the day, but compromising for some people's schedules. So we'll be on tomorrow in the afternoon. Check for us, the showtime. Actually, if you're on the West Coast, it'll actually be in the morning. We'll be here 11 a.m. Pacific. So showtime tomorrow is 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central, and 11 a.m. Pacific. Terry Kelleher, white man, adopted a black child. Someone posted about this gentleman on the Facebook page. If you want to read, you can go to the Facebook group. All you have to do is click the link that is on the show page and scroll down. It's not too far. Just scroll down a little ways and you'll see it. It's at colorlines.com. You can just go to the website as well, colorlines.com, and put in his name. You can do a site search for his name, and it should be there. I'll get the description filled out after the program, so you can check there as well. But looking forward to having him on the program tomorrow. On Sunday, suspected racist Dr. June Terpstra. She is the white woman who authored the piece "White Terrorism in Arizona." We were talking I think just last week, about the shooting incident in Arizona and why that incident was not being discussed as an act of terrorism. This white woman did write about it as an act of terrorism, and she also writes a lot about racism, white supremacy. She'll be on the program this Sunday afternoon. I believe the showtime will be 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. I believe our listener in Atlanta, she suggested Jeb Middlebrooks. He'll be on the program Sunday, January the 30th, that afternoon. I don't have the showtime in front of me, but we already locked that up. So we'll have a lot of white people for the end of the month. And Dr. Martin Kevorkian returns to the context of white supremacy. Should be very interesting. So it'll be good to have white people back on the program to go at some suspected racists. One thing I want to do before I get to some of the other material that I had planned for this program, the white people are allowing sponsors. So if you have books and or projects you would like to promote, that can be a source of revenue for the cows. So you can shoot me an email if you know someone that you think might be interested in having their product. We can promote here. Books, certainly. If you know anyone if you know non-white people who are writing books, definitely would be interested in promoting, getting another source of revenue for the program. I know Mr. Fuller, he said yesterday that according to him, he's asked, and about 8 out of 10 people that call him to purchase a book said that they heard about him listening to this program. So that definitely would be helpful. Non-white people helping one another all down. We're doing a fundraiser for the duration of the month. Please invest. That would be super helpful. The link is right in the description. The book list at Amazon.com. Books are super helpful. I just use those so that I can prepare and research for the program. Also, another thing everybody can do, posting links. That is super, super helpful. If you can just post links to the program, you can put it on Facebook, you can put it on Twitter. That just has such a big impact, because this is not the Oprah Winfrey Show, and white people do not invest, hundreds of thousands of dollars in marketing this program. So the more people that can put it on Facebook and Twitter and anywhere else online where you can post links, MySpace, I don't know all the social sites, if you have a Ning or whatever, just post it, share it as often as possible. If you can share a link to a program, it doesn't even have to be the most current program. You can dig through the archives and find different broadcasts, but just share the program as much as possible. That is super helpful. That is one way that you can invest in replacing white supremacy with justice, if you think this program is constructive in that effort. One of the other things I wanted to address, Brenda Carter, the mother of Frederick Jermaine Carter, that is the 26-year-old black male who was found hanging in Mississippi. I did follow up. Someone requested that I see if there was any additional information with regards to what happened in that case. I called his mother, Brenda Carter, earlier this week. I called her 2 days ago, and she said that she did not have any additional information at this time. She said that she is still waiting on the autopsy report. She said that she's not really sure when that report will be complete, but she advised me to call her in about a week or two, and she should have more information, and she said she would be happy to share once she knows more about what happened. So I will follow up. I told her I would call her in about 10 days or so and see if she's heard anything. So I will let you know when I find out something. We'll see if we can make that another program, and please, say something about it to make sure that I don't forget. Just trying to juggle a lot right now. So say something about it. Just give me a little reminder, either on the show or on Facebook or whatever, just to make sure that I do stay on top of what took place with Frederick Jermaine Carter. In that vein, I actually had a free moment this morning. I actually am a little tired. I'm doing all these programs. I looked, and I think this is the 13th consecutive day that we've been on the air, which is just a lot of programs. So I was a little tired the last couple of days, but I'm hanging in there. White people do not take a break. They are on their job. I'm trying to do the same, so hanging in. And I was able to take some time to stay on the grind about keeping up with current events and what's in the news. And I looked this morning at the news, and I found just real interesting material. That Google News search, excellent tool. I would highly recommend folks use it, even if you're not looking for racism. If you're doing a report of some sort and you want to get, see if there are news items on it, use that Google News search. And particularly with racism, it is fascinating because there are so many news reports coming out that address racism in some way, shape, or form. You can search, right? Like, let's say you search at 9 a.m. in the morning. If you wait and do that same search in maybe 2 hours, it could be totally different, because so many things are happening that are dealing with racism. Like, you just be surprised how many articles are generated and how quickly. It's just continuous stream of articles and news reports where, someone has a complaint about racism. It's really fascinating. But I did the search this morning, and I didn't even spend a whole lot of time. Like, I just looked and I found 4 or 5 articles really quick that were very interesting. And I'm going to share some of the news reports. I like doing stuff to keep us in the know about the news, even if you all don't find it to be of benefit. I think it's great. I highly encourage non-white people to read the newspaper. You will always find interesting material. The first report that I found in the news, popping up on my screen right now. Give me 1 second. Okay. This is in the Vanguard Online Edition. Vanguard Online Edition. The name of this article is Okafor's family accuse U.S. Police of Racism. This was published today, on January 20th, 2011. The family, Okafor's family, is to hire an investigator, and they fix burial for February 19th. This is an African name. I'm going to do my best with it, but I hope I will be able to pronounce it correctly. Ugo Nwokoro, I think that's it, Nwokoro. The spokesman of Mr. Okafor's family said yesterday that Uche will not go down without proper investigation. It was the backdrop of their experience with the police that fueled his position. Uche Okafor was found hanging in his Dallas home January the 6th, 2011. Police put the cause of death as suicide, but later changed and said the cause was undetermined. This followed the resilience of Ugo and later supported by Anthony Ogbe of the Nigerian consulate in Atlanta. The police were compelled to respect the report of the medical examiner, who did not rush to conclude that suicide had taken place. From what we have experienced here, I read a clear case of racism with regard to the police. They have not done a thorough job in the death of Uche Okafor, and they know it, Ugo said angrily yesterday. He further added, fingerprints were not taken. Neighbors were not interviewed or asked questions, and the man who called Uche's wife to inform him that he was not picking his calls and even suggested that she should go to the house to find out why he has not been questioned by the police. What a shoddy job when Anthony Ogbe of the Nigerian consulate told the police that they should take their investigation seriously because Uche was a Nigerian hero and that the people of Nigeria were highly interested in the case. The police sergeant who responded said that Uche might have been a Nigerian star, but he was not as big as the American football and basketball stars. We were all shocked by his remark. I immediately concluded that their action smacked of racism, and because of this, we may hire private investigators and another medical examiner. Uche will not go down without proper investigation. Ugo said that there would be a Christian wake in Dallas on February 4th in Dallas, and that the burial has tentatively been fixed for February 19th in Nigeria. Uche's body was also said not to have exhibited features common with a body that dies through hanging. That is the end of the report. Incidentally, if you want to read this for yourself, it is on the Facebook page. I actually put it on the other Facebook page. So this is on the Facebook page that is that Tater Pie created. So for this Facebook page, you can go to facebook.com/RWSWJ, and it'll take you to the correct Facebook page to find this article. I posted it this morning, and today would be Thursday, January the 20th. So if you scroll back to Thursday, January 20, you will see this article if you would like to read it for yourself. But reminded me of unfortunately, the death of Frederick Jermaine Carter, once again, black male found hanging, and shoddy job by enforcement officers in investigating what happened, and just seeing, at least from what was reported, a real callous attitude about it. You know, who cares? This guy's, he's nobody here. He's nobody. We don't even care about our athletes. We curse LeBron James and Tiger Woods out every day. Who cares about some athlete from Africa? Whatever. Just another day in the system of racism, white supremacy. Next article that I found this morning, found all of these on Thursday, January 20th. Next article Moving through the news. Okay. Global system of racism, white supremacy. This report, Racism Row over India's biggest literary festival. So we are moving worldwide. New Delhi. India's biggest book festival kicks off Friday, clouded by accusations of racism and an ugly public spat over the apparent obsession with former colonial power Britain in literary circles. This literary festival in the western desert state is one of Asia's biggest book events, drawing many renowned international and South Asian writers and crowds of up to 30,000. This year features Nobel winners Orman Pamuk and J.M. Coates on a long list of luminaries who are set to appear in conversation in DG Palace, the converted 19th century mansion that hosts the event. The atmosphere is informal, and the debates are conducted in a polite and generally consensual manner, often featuring the father of the festival, the British historian and expert on India, William Dowell. I can't pronounce the last name. This gentleman, a ubiquitous presence on the Indian literary scene, who co-founded the modern event in 2006, has been sucked into a damaging row after coming under attack in the Indian news magazine Open. In an excoriating piece published on January 1st, a political editor questioned why a white, middle-aged Scottish man had established himself as a pompous arbiter of literary merit in India. The festival, he argued, works not because it is a literary enterprise, but because it ties us to the British literary establishment. After dismissing British foreign correspondents who write books about his country, this gentleman, who is non-white, so-called Indian, then suggested that the Indian authors were mere sideshows next to the main attractions, such as hit British writer Ian McEwan. Hurt by the attack and an unflattering portrait of him in the colonial era regalia, this white gentleman, suspected racist, took the decision to respond to the provocation, pointing out that 2/3 of the invitees were Indian. British writers, brown, black, and white, make up a minority within the minority of foreigners, he wrote back, pointing out that he has written 5 books on his adopted country where he has lived on and off for 25 years. The article felt little more than the literary equivalent of pouring feces through an immigrant's letterbox, the suspected racist said, adding that this non-white person's argument reeked of double standards and reverse racism. Wow, white people, that must just be the global part of the code. If a non-white person complains about white people, accuse them of being a reverse racist. Continuing, just reverse the proposition for a moment. If anyone was to suggest that Vikram Seth had no right or qualification to write a novel about England like Unequal Music, it would be regarded as blatantly racist, he said. In a further twist, Indian author Pramod Kumar then declared that he and others had directed and conceived the first festival. This suspected racist was guilty of post-colonial whitewashing by declaring himself as the founder. I think I've heard accusations of that before, where non-white people do something and then white people come along and say that they're the ones who did it, and they take all the credit. Continuing with the article, he says, the row continues to rumble on. Opens, that's the magazine, their website, and is likely to feature prominently in the conversations of the chattering classes who make an annual pilgrimage to this literary event. There's a South African-born author of the book winner Disgrace, is scheduled to lead a panel discussion on the legacy of Imperial English. whether Indian writers are indeed the sideshow will be seen when national heavyweights, they're just, basically that's the end of the article. A little difficult to read with some of the names, but I can dig it. I hope people were able to understand. Basically, literary festival, non-white person in the area of the world known as India had complaints that it looked like white people were just taking over this event, and just having non-white people there is just kind of an afterthought. And this is just a continuing legacy of what they called colonialism, i.e. the system of white supremacy. Pretty interesting article. And as I said, if I get that Skype account, people invest. I definitely want to make an effort to focus on different areas of the world. India would definitely be one. Would be great to get some people on the program from that area of the world and just hear what they have to say about white people. Moving on, next article. Let's see what we got here. This article... Okay, this is about the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. This is from AOL News. From AOL News, this article, FBI probes racism motive in failed MLK Day bombing. This was really interesting because this took place in Washington State, and I didn't really hear anything about this. Authorities say a potentially lethal bomb hidden in a backpack planted along a Martin Luther King Jr. Day parade route in Spokane, Washington, could have inflicted multiple casualties, and the FBI is investigating whether the motive was racism. The bomb was defused at the scene before it could explode Monday, and no one was hurt, but it caused quite a stir about half an hour before the city's annual Unity March. The parade's 1,500 marchers had to be rerouted along a new path, and business in the area of the sidewalk bench where the backpack was found had to be evacuated. Lindsay Ricewig was working at her bookstore when an officer in a bomb suit came in to alert them of the danger. Seeing his suit, we decided that maybe we should back away from the windows, Ricewig told the Spokesman Review newspaper. Streets were closed for another 9 hours. Witnesses told local TV station KREM that they spotted the black Swiss Army brand backpack half open with wires sticking out of a plastic package. They alerted police, and the bomb squad moved in. They brought bomb sniffer dogs and a robot designed to disarm explosives. The investigators today are trying to determine who owns the backpack and what their motive could be. The FBI is offering a $20,000 reward for information leading to the identity of the owner, who may have been seen between 8 and 9:25 a.m. that day. KREM reported the Bureau is also asking anyone who took photos or video in the neighborhood that day to send them to authorities for review in case the owner was inadvertently caught on film. We're certainly approaching it as a potential domestic terrorism event at this point, Frank Harrell, the FBI's supervisory senior resident agent in Spokane, told the New York Times. Whether the motive was racial or an individual was being targeted, it's too soon to say. Authorities won't comment on the nature of the bomb or how sophisticated its construction was. But Harrell told the Los Angeles Times that the device clearly would have had the potential to inflict multiple casualties, injury, and death to humans. Two unnamed security sources told the Spokesman Review that whoever planted the bomb planned to detonate it remotely using a device similar to a garage door opener. The bomb also contained shrapnel designed to blast out into a large area, they said. No one has claimed responsibility, but Harrell called the link to the King Day March inescapable. The eastern part of Washington state, along with neighboring Idaho, has long been a haven for white supremacist groups. The most infamous among them is the Aryan Nations, whose leader gathered racist and anti-Semites at his compound for 2 decades before his death in 2004. In 1996, a pipe bomb packed with nails and screws exploded outside Spokane's City Hall. No one was injured, and 2 white supremacists were later indicted. It would be nice to think that all this kind of activity was in the past, but obviously it's not, City Council President Joe Shogan told the Spokesman Review, referring to the 1996 bombing. Too often, there's that attitude that it can't happen here. Well, it is happening. Spokane Mayor Mary Berner also issued a statement saying she was saddened by the bombing attempt. I was struck that on a day when we celebrate Dr. King, a champion of nonviolence, we were faced with a significant violent threat. Berner said in a statement excerpted by the Associated Press, "This is unacceptable in our community or any community." Again, it seems this was reported pretty well. It was in the New York Times, Los Angeles Times. I'm reading this from AOL News, so it seems like this got around, but I hadn't really heard anything about it, and I'm in Washington State, so a little surprising. But system of racism, white supremacy, white people letting off bombs on Martin Luther King Day, shouldn't be a surprise. The one thing that did stick out at me as I'm reading this report, you talk about codification and what that means, basically being able to solve problems. Situation pops up, you are able to manage things. You are able to get things done. They have what looks to be a white person. He's got his bomb gear on, his mask on. He goes to, disassemble this bomb and make sure everyone is safe so it doesn't detonate. That is what codification looks like. Anything happens, you know what to do. There's never a situation where you're running around, oh my Lord, what are we going to do? Chaos, just we'll pray or what have you. Codification means, okay, this is what happened, this is what we do. A, B, C, D, we already know what's supposed to happen. John is supposed to do this. I'm supposed to do this. Ted is supposed to do this. That's codification. Mary's supposed to go here. Jane is supposed to say this. That's what codification looks like, being able to handle anything. And I was just thinking, they got white people who are trained. This is what you can do when you have a system. A system, you can set up places, so-called institutions that will train people. This is what you do to disassemble a bomb. This is what you do should there be a bomb threat. This is what the team does. I don't think black people have anything like that in place where we can say, okay, there's a threat, might be a bomb in this place. I don't think if white people decided that they were not going to help us, I don't think we have people in place who could function as a team to get that problem solved immediately. I could be wrong, but I don't think we do. I think that's because we don't have a system. White people have a system in place, which is why they're able to get things done. And hopefully, as we get a better understanding of racism, white supremacy, we can correct that and just be more systematic about the way we go about trying to solve problems, and especially the way we go about dealing with white people. Speaking of bombs and Martin Luther King Jr., I try to be responsive to requests that listeners make and things that folks think would be constructive to share on the program. A listener earlier this week, I believe on Monday, on the day that white people have designated as a so-called holiday for Martin Luther King Jr., on Monday there was a caller who wanted information about speeches that Dr. King has given, other than the I Have a Dream speech. He said, that's the speech that we always hear. Where are some of these other speeches? He didn't die until 68. Where are some of the speeches that he gave in 67, 66, even 68 before he died? Where are those speeches? And I wanted to take some time because I know this, I suppose, Monday and maybe even for the duration of January and certainly February, people will be playing a lot of Dr. King's speeches and video of him. And I thought, hey, we could do that on the cows too. We'll just do it in a different manner on this program and look at some of the other speeches. I know you're going to hear I Have a Dream probably 5,000 times before March 1st. We'll look at some of the speeches that you most likely will not hear, and then we can also have an evaluation of those. So in that vein, I wanted to share, this is, and I had kind of a loud eureka moment. Maybe it won't mean anything to anyone else, but I disturbed the household. I was thinking the speech that we're going to listen to, this is the eulogy for the young victims of the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing. This is the 4 little girls in Alabama who were killed in 1963, September of 1963, in the church. Sunday morning, right before service, and Martin Luther King Jr., he gave a eulogy for 3 of those victims. The 4th victim, she had a separate funeral. But I thought it would be interesting to kind of listen to what he had to say, some of the eulogies from that period of time when so many Black people were being murdered who were attempting to counter racism, white supremacy. Some of those eulogies have become pretty popular, infamous. I know Ossie Davis, his eulogy of Malcolm X, another one that has become pretty well read. But I thought it would be interesting to listen to this and just kind of ponder over what he says. This is one of those speeches that you don't hear too often. And that is interesting because this happened, weeks after the march on Washington in August of 1963. Just very interesting that you can have a speech that draws so much attention and then a speech that he gives just a few weeks later gets no attention. I don't think I've ever heard anyone play this speech, read this speech, reference what he said, ever. So I don't know. Maybe people that are listening in, you can call and let me know, but we will play the entire speech. It's not very long, so, it's about 15 minutes altogether. There's a brief introduction from Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth. He is also a Black male. He was intimately involved in the so-called civil rights movement, worked closely with Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. So we'll listen to this, and then we can share thoughts afterwards. I want you all to keep in mind as an exercise, if you ever are thinking about an issue that's related to racism, white supremacy, and you're trying to get a gauge and get an understanding of what happened, sometimes I have found it helpful to change the race. Like if I could imagine specific people who are in a situation, if I could imagine them being a different color, like if they're non-white, if I could think of them as a white person and how that would change the situation or vice versa. Think about that in this situation. As you listen to the words of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., I just want you to think, if he was talking about 4 white girls who had been murdered, 4 young white girls who had been murdered, just kind of think about that as you hear these words and, just see if that has an impact on what you think and how you feel about these words. So we'll play it. This is from September 1963, eulogy for the young victims of the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing with a brief introduction from Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth.
Introduction to the eulogy for the young victims of the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing. Written and read by Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth.
Hello, I'm Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth. It was in Birmingham in 1954 that I first met Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. while the city buzzed and chatted about the, quote, young man with a Ph.D., end quote. In a short meeting with him, I, the Birmingham young agitator, was quite impressed with his unassuming disposition, his humility, and his heartfelt belief in nonviolent direct action to end segregation in the South. Being preachers, we knew segregation was wrong. God's Word teaches nonviolence, and Gandhi's example of suffering and victory in India led us to believe that nonviolent action was the way to achieve freedom. The 1954 Supreme Court decision against school segregation gave us new hope, and we firmly sensed that the tide of American injustice was beginning to turn. Despite Southern reactions to the decision, interposition, notification, citizens' councils, segregated officials and judiciary, police terror, and the Ku Klux Klan, we Negro leaders kept contact, cooperation, and kept praying and making plans to overthrow segregation. First, by nonviolent appeal to conscience, and then by nonviolent direct action. In retaliation, Alabama outlawed the NAACP in 1956, loosing a series of bombings, beatings, and harassment of defenseless Negroes. But less than 2 weeks later, that act caused the organization of the Birmingham, Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights, which challenged all aspects of segregation in Bull Corners, Birmingham, and suffered untold indignities for 7 years before combining with Dr. Martin Luther King's SCLC, thus launching the massive nonviolent demonstrations of 1963, demonstrations which literally broke the back of legal segregation in the South. An exceptional man for such violent times, Dr. King truly practiced what he preached. He lived a nonviolent life. He was disturbed even to wound another person's spirit, even while speaking the truth in the sometimes contentious staff and board meetings. Once in Montgomery, I saw a man strike him, and he did not grimace or show anger. Instead, he turned a melancholy, forgiving face to his young white assailant and refused to prosecute. During the Mississippi Meredith March, a Klansman with a full gun rack in his truck nearly ran us down, stopping within 5 feet of Martin and me. Martin did not try to jump out of the way. He only said resignedly, "Well, if this is where God wants it, we'll just have to go home from here." It was also during that march that he kept his remarkably stoic calm, as Stokely Carmichael frequently interrupted him with cries of "Black Power! Black Power!" His calm aura translated into a refreshingly informal attitude as well. Once, while lecturing young President Kennedy by phone on the necessity of nonviolent creative tension, he paused in mid-sentence to say, "Wait a minute, Mr. President. Ralph, bring me a couple of pieces of chicken back, please, and bring me some more of that bread. Fred, ain't this some great bread?" We believed in nonviolence, yes, and it did work. We marched, we sat in, we campaigned. Victory came only when thousands of children and adults, with a fervor and enthusiasm, endured fire hoses, dog bites, police brutality, inhumane treatment. We kept the jails full, the courts clogged, and brought shopping to a standstill. Yes, we stopped cities. We emerged victorious many times. Still, there was always a moment when one stops and asks the question, at what price did this victory come? The Klan bombing of the 16th Street Church that killed 4 beautiful, innocent girls at worship brought heartache and sorrow to their families, gloom to Birmingham, and recognition of true brutality to this nation. My heart ached with pain as we searched for answers. I thought of the thousands of children who marched in the face of death. I thought of my own and my family's brushes with death. Would the grieving parents and friends of these 4 girls entertain thoughts of anger and blame, or would they accept their great loss as God's will? Solomon reasoned that God has put eternity in man's heart. Dr. King's eulogy portrays these 4 innocents as entering life only briefly, playing nobly and well their parts on the stage of history, and then moving through the curtain back into eternity. The sermon weaves from their death a fabric of messages aimed at those who should be active and vocal in the crusade for freedom and dignity. The silent minister, the vacillating politician, the compromising federal government, and the Negro who accepts segregation without challenge. The courage to listen and act upon Dr. King's message, courage, not caution, can change a system that causes the death of children. I believe with Solomon that, quote, the wrath of man shall be praising thee, end quote. For God will bring good from this evil act of murder, allowing the blood of the innocents to be a redemptive force for the city and Southland. The prophet reminds that bitterness and thoughts of retaliation would not be helpful, but love can be redeeming to any person, even of the lowest mind. Dr. King's words to the grieving families point out the only true democracy, the death of every person, regardless of status or color. He lifted them with Christianity's assurance that the resurrection has taken death's sting and power. So death is not an end, but an open door to eternal life. Finally, Dr. King's eulogy for these martyred children does not dwell on the future glory and happiness of heaven. Rather, it remained an eloquent and loving appeal to the conscience for personal and active commitment to make and live earthly life better, to defend justice, human dignity, and the worth of all human beings. The God of heaven gave us this life on earth to live and to love. Heaven begins now for those who strive to make this life better.
Context of White Supremacy. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the eulogy for the young victims of the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing, September 1963. Very interesting speech, eulogy. I had not heard this. I had not heard this piece from Dr. King before today, which again I think is quite significant, seeing as this is just a few weeks after the historic March on Washington. Everybody's buzzing, all this change, holding hands, and yay! And then this event, which is also historic. Again, Spike Lee made a documentary film that was nominated for an Academy Award, For Little Girls, which is outstanding. Bill Cosby's in it. I believe Jesse Jackson is in it. Coretta Scott King is in it. It's really good. A lot of detail. He just did a fantastic job. But yeah, I think this event is pretty well known, and I just haven't heard that eulogy. But I think it's a really interesting study in racism, white supremacy. I thought it was quite profound that he used the term system. I think he used the term system of segregation over and over, system, which I just thought was very interesting, understanding that white people are operating as a system. I think if perhaps he had got his hands on Mr. Fuller's work and used slightly different words, I don't know, maybe that would have had a constructive impact. But that did leap out at me the first time I listened to the speech. Also, white identification. It was all over the speech, in my opinion, all over the speech, which, and again, I want people to think, if you can have a moment for the folks who saw Samuel L. Jackson and A Time to Kill, Matthew McConaughey, his closing argument to the jury in A Time to Kill. Imagine if it was a white child that had been the victim of rape and assault. Imagine if this had happened to a white child. And that, it changes everything. Like, oh my gosh, anything would be, just to compensate for this, heinous act, this heinous crime against these young white children. Same thing if it was 4 white girls who had been, just brutally executed at Sunday school, no less. How how would people have responded? How would this speech sound the same? Would Dr. King have sounded the same if this had been white children? I don't think so. That there's an extraordinary difference between the value of a white life and the value of a black life in the system of white supremacy. I'll say that one more time before I continue. There is an extraordinary difference between the life of a white person and the life of a black person in the system of white supremacy. And I think this speech gives you some evidence of that difference in value. Even in this speech, the white identification, the appeal to our white brothers, they are redeemable. This little bit of black blood, these 4 black children, this is a sacrifice to redeem the humanity of our white brothers. I don't know. I tell you, I don't even like referring to black people as my brothers, much less white people. And Justice and I think are in agreement. We have both concluded white means racist, white supremacist. No ifs, ands, or buts. If you are white, you are a racist. So I do not regard racists as my brothers or sisters.
That's what I said.
Why do you say that?
I'm meaning, about the racist part, that, if you're white, then you're racist.
What did you think about the speech? Were you able to hear the speech from Reverend King?
I heard it, and I think that it was interesting.
Did you hear him reference his white brothers? Did you hear him say that?
I think I did. But I might be incorrect.
I know it was kind of long, so, And I might have misheard, If you didn't hear him say it, you can call in and let me know. But I'm pretty certain he did say white brothers. Also, towards the end of
that's scary also.
Him, white brothers?
Yes, that's scary also.
I agree. It is just not logical. It's just not logical under conditions dominated by white supremacy. It's not, picking on a victim. It's just not logical. He also referenced Shakespeare when he was wrapping up, and it's white identification. It's being white identified. When your reference points tell you ought to pay attention to those metaphors, and when someone they feel the need to invoke this person's name or as a reference point, pay attention to that stuff. Very important. It reveals a lot of information about the way a person thinks and the associations that they make. We're at a funeral, just a really disgraceful act of white supremacy and the slaughter of these 4 children, and we still got to use white people as our reference point to really drive something home of meaning. We got to rely on white people to be our reference point. White identification, and again, it's not an indictment of King. It's their system. They train, they educate us. We go to their schools to learn, quote unquote, and it's just a part of the grooming of subjects. It's how you groom slaves and victims. Training them in regards to how they're going to think about the world, think about you, think about themselves even. And it's the same thing when Jay-Z names his company Rockefeller. Same thing, being white identified. Shakespeare is going to be our reference point for how we describe things that are happening in our lives. It's being white identified. Our white brothers, it's being white identified. No way, in my opinion, there's no way we're going to solve the problem of racism, white supremacy, white terrorism worldwide when we continue to identify ourselves with white people. It's just not going to happen. And I think that speech really there was a lot of evidence of white identification. Actually, when I was listening to some of his other speeches, it jumped out at me as well. It jumped out pretty hard, actually. I could be incorrect. Again, as I said, I'm not, trying to take a jab at Martin Luther King Jr., just evaluating information. And I hope I'm doing two birds with one stone. I hope it is a logical commentary that I'm offering just my opinion. And I hope it's an opportunity for people to hear Martin Luther King Jr. that you probably aren't going to hear too often. I don't think they play this eulogy on television every day. I don't think Oprah is going to have this on her broadcast before the end of the week. So I hope it's constructive, and I'm very eager to hear comments from people who were listening with regards to what they thought, and especially, if these were white children, if your thoughts or feelings about this speech would change. But yeah, I'm definitely curious to hear your input. Before I hit the phone lines, I also found another article. I didn't read this with the group because I thought it was related when I was doing my research and looking for information so that I could share things about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that are post March on Washington. I didn't know this, I found that in 1966, which is the same year that, I believe, same year that he began his campaign in Chicago, that Dr. King was awarded the Planned Parenthood Federation of America Margaret Sanger Award. And I'm reading this. It is not linked on the show page, but I'll link this one. Because I hadn't heard this before. And I'm so ignorant that if someone had told me this when I was 20, that Martin Luther King Jr. or any black person had received the Planned Parenthood Margaret Sanger Award, it wouldn't have meant anything to me. I just would have, okay, that's great. When can I win the Margaret Sanger Award? Do you get a prize with that? But yeah, I found this and I double checked it. It apparently is checking out, at least according to what I have found. If anyone finds anything that contradicts this, please let me know. But I'll just read you the article that I have, and I will post this article in the description so you all can see what I'm reading. In 1966, the Planned Parenthood Federation of America inaugurated the Planned Parenthood Federation of America Margaret Sanger Award to honor the woman who founded America's family planning movement. The Planned Parenthood Federation of America, PPFA, Margaret Sanger Award is given annually to individuals of distinction in recognition of excellence and leadership in furthering reproductive health and reproductive rights. In its first year, the award was bestowed upon 4 men: Dr. Carl G. Hartman for his singular contribution to human knowledge of the reproductive processes, General William H. Draper, Jr., for his singular contribution during the past decade to the mobilization of public awareness and government action to resolve the world population crisis, President Lyndon Baines Johnson for his vigorous and far-sighted leadership in bringing the United States government to enunciate and implement an affirmative, effective population policy at home and abroad, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., for his courageous resistance to bigotry and his lifelong dedication to the advancement of social justice and human dignity. Dr. King's award was presented on May 5th, 1966. The citation read, "This award is presented to the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. for his courageous resistance to bigotry and his lifelong dedication to the advancement of social justice and human dignity. Facing jail, abuse, and physical danger, Dr. King's unceasing efforts in behalf of all Americans to win freedom for the Negro people parallel closely Ms. Sanger's fight over the last half-century for the emancipation of women from the burdens of perpetual childbearing and the emancipation of children from a future poverty and hopelessness. Neither Ms. Sanger nor Dr. King has hesitated to challenge unjust laws, cruel social customs, and blind prejudice that hold people in ignorance and degradation. Our courts and legislatures, and most of all the human heart and mind, have been the crucible in which they have forged a nobler history for all mankind. In the tradition of all great humanitarians who have seen that human life and progress are indeed indivisible, Dr. King has lent his eloquent voice to the cause of worldwide voluntary family planning. For Martin Luther King's unique qualities of understanding, compassion, and bravery, and for his wise and unwavering leadership in securing for all people their basic human right to knowledge, dignity, and opportunity that are the foundation and principle of Margaret Sanger's life, this award is presented. Ms. Coretta Scott King delivered her husband's acceptance speech on his behalf. Before reading Dr. King's speech, Ms. King declared, "I am proud tonight to say a word in behalf of your mentor and the person who symbolizes the ideas of this organization, Margaret Sanger. Because of her dedication, her deep convictions, and for her suffering for what she believed in, I would like to say that I am proud to be a woman tonight." Planned Parenthood is proud to reprint Dr. King's acceptance speech. Family Planning, a Special and Urgent Concern, by the Reverend Martin Luther King, Jr. Recently, the press has been filled with reports of sightings of flying saucers. While we need not give credence to those stories, they allow our imagination to speculate on how visitors from outer space would judge us. I am afraid they would be stupefied at our conduct. They would observe that for death planning, we spend billions to create engines and strategies for war. They would also observe that we spend millions to prevent death by disease and other causes. Finally, they would observe that we spend paltry sums for population planning, even though its spontaneous growth is an urgent threat to life on our planet. Our visitors from outer space could be forgiven if they reported home that our planet is inhabited by a race of insane men whose future is bleak and uncertain. There is no human circumstance more tragic than the persisting existence of a harmful condition for which a remedy is readily available. Family planning, to relate population to world resources, is possible, practical, and necessary. Unlike plagues of the Dark Ages or contemporary diseases we do not yet understand, the modern plague of overpopulation is soluble by means we have discovered and with resources we possess. What is lacking is not sufficient knowledge of the solution, but universal consciousness of the gravity of the problem and education of the billions who are its victims. It is easier for a Negro to understand a social paradox because he has lived so long with evils that could be eradicated but were perpetuated by indifference or ignorance. The Negro finally had to devise unique methods to deal with this problem and perhaps the measure of success he is realizing can be an inspiration to others coping with tenacious social problems. In our struggle for equality, we were confronted with the reality that many millions of people were essentially ignorant of our conditions or refused to face unpleasant truths. The hardcore bigot was merely one of our adversaries. The millions who were blind to our plight had to be compelled to face the social evil their indifference permitted to flourish. After centuries of relative silence and enforced acceptance, we adapted a technique of exposing the problem by direct and dramatic methods. We had confidence that when we awakened the nation to the immorality and evil of inequality, there would be an upsurge of conscience followed by remedial action. We knew that there were solutions and that the majority of the nation were ready for them. Yet we also knew that the existence of solutions would not automatically operate to alter conditions. We had to organize not only arguments, but people in the millions for action. Finally, we had to be prepared to accept all the consequences involved in dramatizing our grievances in the unique style we had devised. There is a striking kinship between our movement and Margaret Sanger's early efforts. She, like we, saw the horrifying conditions of ghetto life. Like we, she knew that all of society is poisoned by cancerous slums. Like we, she was a direct actionist, a non-violent resistor. She was willing to accept scorn and abuse until the truth she saw was revealed to millions. At the turn of the century, she went into the slums and set up a birth control clinic. And for this deed, she went to jail because she was violating an unjust law. Yet the years have justified her actions. She launched a movement which is obeying a higher law to preserve human life under humane conditions. Margaret Sanger had to commit what was then called a crime in order to enrich humanity, and today we honor her courage and vision, for without them there would have been no beginning. Our sure beginning in the struggle for equality by nonviolent direct action may not have been so resolute without the tradition established by Margaret Sanger and people like her. Negroes have no mere academic nor ordinary interest in family planning. They have a special and urgent concern. Recently, the subject of Negro family life has received extensive attention. Unfortunately, studies have overemphasized the problem of the Negro male ego and almost entirely ignored the most serious element, Negro migration. During the past half-century, Negroes have migrated on a massive scale, transplanting millions from rural communities to crammed urban ghettos in their migration. As with all migrants, they carried with them the folk ways of the countryside into an inhospitable city slum. The size of family that may have been appropriate and tolerable on a manually cultivated farm was carried over to the jammed streets of the ghetto. In respects, Negroes were atomized, neglected, and discriminated against. Yet, the worst omission was the absence of institutions to acclimate them to their new environment. Margaret Sanger, who offered an important institutional remedy, was unfortunately ignored by social and political leaders in this period. In consequence, Negro folk ways in family size persisted. The problem was compounded when unrestrained exploitation and discrimination accented the bewilderment of the newcomer, and high rates of illegitimacy and fragile family relationships resulted. For the Negro, therefore, intelligent guides of family planning are a profoundly important ingredient in his quest for security and a decent life. There are mountainous obstacles still separating Negroes from a normal existence, yet one element in stabilizing his life would be an understanding of and easy access to means to develop a family related in size to his community environment and to the income potential he can command. I'll read that sentence one more time. Yet one element in stabilizing his life would be an understanding of and easy access to the means to develop a family related in size to his community environment and to the income potential he can command. This is not to suggest that the Negro will solve all his problems through Planned Parenthood. His problems are far more complex, encompassing economic security, education, freedom from discrimination, decent housing, and access to culture. Yet if family planning is sensible, it can facilitate or at least not be an obstacle to the solution of the many profound problems that plague him. The Negro constitutes half the poor of the nation. Like all poor, Negro and white, they have many unwanted children. This is a cruel evil they urgently need to control. There is scarcely anything more tragic in human life than a child who is not wanted. That which should be a blessing becomes a curse for parent and child. There is nothing inherent in the Negro mentality which creates this condition. Their poverty causes it. When Negroes have been able to ascend economically, statistics reveal they plan their families with even greater care than whites. Negroes of higher economic and educational status actually have fewer children than white families in the same circumstances. Some commentators point out that with present birth rates, it will not be long before Negroes are a majority in many of the major cities of the nation. As a consequence, they can be expected to take political control, and many people are apprehensive at this prospect. Negroes do not seek political control by this means. They seek only what they are entitled to and do not wish for domination purchased at the cost of human misery. Negroes were once bred by slave owners to be sold as merchandise. They do not welcome any solution which involves population breeding as a weapon. They are instinctively sympathetic to all who offer methods that will improve their lives and offer them fair opportunity to develop and advance as all other people in our society. For these reasons, we are natural allies of those who seek to inject any form of planning in our society that enriches life and guarantees the right to exist in freedom and dignity. For those constructive movements, we are prepared to give our energies and consistent support. Because in the need for family planning, Negro and white have a common bond, and together we can and should unite our strength for the wise preservation, not of races in general, but of the one race we all constitute, the human race. Margaret Sanger was too ill to attend the awards ceremony in May of 1966. She died the following September. Ms. Sanger would have been deeply honored and pleased to have heard such beautiful tributes from kindred heroes in the struggle for equality and civil rights, Dr. and Mrs. Martin Luther King Jr. About 2 weeks after the award ceremony, Dr. King wrote the following letter to Cass Canfield, chairman of the Executive Committee of the Planned Parenthood Federation of America, World Population Emergency Campaign. Dear Mr. Canfield, words are inadequate for me to say how honored I was to be the recipient of the Margaret Sanger Award. This award will remain among my most cherished possessions. While I cannot claim to be worthy of such a single honor, I can assure you that I accept it with deep humility and sincere gratitude. Such a wonderful expression of support is of inestimable value for the continuance of my humble efforts. Again, let me say how much I regret that at the last minute urgent developments in the civil rights movement made it impossible for me to be in Washington to personally receive the award. My wife brought glowing echoes of the wonderful reception and impressiveness of the total occasion. I am happy to be the recipient of the Margaret Sanger Award, and I assure you that this distinct honor will cause me to work even harder for a reign of justice and a rule of love all over our nation. Sincerely yours, Martin Luther King Jr. Again, I will include this article in the description for the program. This is on the Planned Parenthood website, and it's on several other sites as well, just talking about him getting this award and, the significance of it. But, white identified. I guess, you can think how you feel about Planned Parenthood and Margaret Sanger, and if you think they have black people's best interest at heart. I'm going to take a quick break and then hit the phone lines. Before I do, I'll check in with Justice. Did you have anything you wanted to share about that article, or we can wait till the other side of the break?
I don't have anything at this time. Thank you.
No worries. Groovy, we will take a quick commercial break. Hope everybody is doing well and finding some value in the program. We'll be right back. If Skydrifter, if you are listening, if you would like to call into the program, I cannot use my Skype line, but you can use your Skype to call the program. Just dial in through the show line. If you are listening at Blog Talk Radio, there should be a link at the top of the page, a blue button that says Skype. Just click that, and it'll log you right in. You can use your Skype and get online. Would love to hear from you, Skydrifter. Just dial in from the show page. Press the blue tab where it says Skype, and it should bring you on through. I should see you on the switchboard. So try that. If it doesn't work, shoot me a message on Skype, and we'll see if we can figure out how to get you online, sir. Context of White Supremacy. We will be right back.
Is racism hurting you? On issues of race, are you unable to speak, think, and act with clarity and confidence? Are you tired of laughing when nothing is funny, smiling when you are not happy, agreeing when you really disagree? At counterracism.com, you can learn specific strategies and techniques to counter the behaviors of the people who practice racism in all areas of activity, using words correctly, following counter-racist logic, even counter-racist science projects designed to reveal what racism is, how it works, and how to counter it. The open source code writing format allows you pick and choose from a variety of counter-racist suggestions so you can produce the code that works for you. Stop by counterracism.com today and help replace racism with justice.
That's counter-racism.com.
Context of White Supremacy. I will hit the phone lines. I hope Skydrifter was able to figure out things. Always good to hear from him. I'll look for you on the switchboard again if you are not able to dial in through using Skype on the show page. For this particular episode, for this specific episode, just, shoot me a message and we'll see if we can figure it out. If you are interested in speaking, press 1 and I'll open your line up. The folks who have already dialed in and pressed 1, your lines are open, and anybody else just press 1 and I'll pick you up.
Hello, Gus?
Yes, sir. You can be heard.
Okay, how you doing, Gus? I just wanted to say I did my own little social experiment over the last, I'd say, about 16 days using Facebook and just other people that I associate with and socialize with. And I said what I'm going to do is I'm going to document every time I hear a black person or a non-white person say something negative about his or her own race. I said, and then at the end of the 16 days, I'm going to start posting things, not malicious things, just truthful, factful things about white people. And I told my wife, I said, I'm going to show you how fast these people are going to start getting away from me. Super fast. And I didn't put anything malicious. I just stated pure facts. And people start separating themselves from me at lightning speed. And I think what I was trying to show her was this is how much we hate each other right here and now in this day and time. And it was just sad. It was real sad.
I am not surprised. Yeah, I'm eager to hear more about the study in terms of what, I don't know if you want to share what you posted or what have you, but I did want to check and with regards to responses, if anyone had any responses to the speech from Dr. King or the award, just to get any feedback on that. And once folks are done with that, yeah, I'm very interested to hear what you posted on Facebook specifically for this experiment. Any of the folks that are on the line, did anybody have any thoughts about the eulogy that Dr. King gave? Anyone on the line?
Gus, if I can be heard.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks once again to you and Justice for this program and for accepting the calls. What I was going to mention is the speech that you gave with, I believe it was Reverend Orange, the last speech after Dr. King. It makes me very sickening when I hear people refer to each other, and one of the main people that does it quite frequently, consistently, is Cornel West. My white brothers and sisters, and it's like using your fingernails on a chalkboard that makes my skin just stand up. Because I have never heard a white person ever refer to my black brothers and sisters or my Chinese brothers and sisters or Native American brothers and sisters. We always like to include everyone into our discussion, make them a part of our family, be nice to them, and they have no intention of being inclusive in this only if it's of benefit to them. If it's a monetary gain, like getting money from the Indian reservation, then they don't have a problem being included as a Native American or claiming how much Indian blood they have in them. But anything else, they don't want any part of it. So when I heard this speech, and as you mentioned, the reference to Shakespeare, and how these girls were a noble cause, and how their purpose was here, and God put them here for their purpose, and now they have gone on. This is a bunch of crap, because if this was my child in a coffin, and he was making this speech, I would have got up and he would have cut his eulogy short, because I would have told him he would have to cut it right then and there. Because my child did not go to a church or a Sunday school for someone to throw a bomb or for you to come up in here and to Lord praises and to say that this was God's will. If you want to go out here and be brutalized, then that's fine. You go on out there and get yourself brutalized. But don't make it acceptable that all black people have to put up with the same crap, which is what this president has done, to be insulted, and then expect everyone else to fall into line and accept this type of punishment, because I'm not going to do it. I am not the turn the cheek type. You hit me, as a matter of fact, I might punch you before you even throw the first punch. You just have to look as if though you're going to do it. But this is what we've been consistently getting from these lukewarm, watered-down people and their speeches, and it makes me sick. That's why I don't like hearing these so-called national leaders, as people want to put them when they get up on these podiums, and they want to give all of these speeches and these flowery languages and tell people about how God is going to provide and, you know, we're going to have it in the here and after and by and all of this foolishness. I'm not here to absolve white from their guilt. They need to be made to feel their guilt. They need to be told what they have done. And it's about time black people stop being their scapegoat for them and their defense attorneys and covering up for them. Let them sit out there. Let people get up there and tell them to their face what they are instead of jumping to their defense. I'm sick and tired of us doing that.
I understand completely. Yeah, and again, you know, I'm not trying to talk bad about Dr. King. He's a victim. I'm a victim, but I see a lot of white identification and the white brothers. I guess I would just go back to the quote from Malcolm X. Anytime we are in a war and the opposition tends to give someone who is on my side a lot of awards and gifts and things, I'm a little suspicious. At Margaret Sanger, I mean, that's, I don't know. Maybe people didn't have as much information about Planned Parenthood, so they didn't really know, you know, their relationship to black people at that time. Maybe that's possible. I'll give that as an out as well. But again, you know, I guess that comes down to how you feel about Planned Parenthood. Yeah, very interesting. I don't know. The other people that have called in, it looks like they're just listening, which is fine. If you all don't want to, if you don't have comments or anything, that's cool. If you all don't have anything else on Dr. King, I will ask the gentleman about his experiment. Did anybody have any other comments about Dr. King, the eulogy, or the Margaret Sanger Award? Okay. The gentleman who did the experiment, what sort of truthful things did you post that irritated folks so?
One of the posts I posted, and I have stuff written down, but I'm actually on the way to pick up my children. But one of the posts that I put up there was yesterday was the final day, and I put basically Black History Month is coming, and there's going to be another black man in a dress. I put that we are laughing at our own demise, and that this was a Hollywood tradition. Hello?
Did someone thank you?
Hello? I hear some music.
I hear music too. That's interesting.
White racists might be trying to interrupt your program.
I don't hear it now. Do you all hear it now?
No. No, it's not.
No, it's good.
Huh. Anyway, just pay attention for that. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I figured stuff like this was going to start happening when you told me how much the show was picking up. But, the post that I put up, the last post was, I put up Black History Month is coming. There's going to be another black man in a dress. It's a Hollywood tradition. Hello?
I suspect it's white people.
Yeah.
I'm here.
I'm sorry, I wasn't hearing anything, but I can hear you now.
The music was playing.
That was strange.
As soon as he started talking about his polls, the music came on.
Yeah.
Let's try again.
Okay. Like I was saying, I put up a post saying it's a Hollywood tradition. You know, Black History Month's coming. There's going to be another black man wearing a dress. You know, even cousins, family members started shooting me. They wasn't even putting up comments on the post, but they started inboxing me like, why are you always putting up stuff like this? And then, you know, I noticed how they started putting up comments that were kind of like, man, I wish I was at home, that were kind of countering what I was saying, but not so much in an indirect way. You know, kind of white identified comments, basically. And not only that, you know, I talked to a friend of mine. You know, he's a non-white guy, but he's not black. And, you know, I was explaining to him some things about, this was at the beginning of it, because he says a lot of sly, slick things. And I don't think he does it consciously. I think he kind of does it subconsciously. And, man, I haven't heard from him since. Man, I wish I had my notebook because I had it all written down. And maybe I could call back when I do have it, or shoot you an email. But I just realized, like, whoa, we really dislike ourselves. We really dislike ourselves, and it's kind of disheartening.
As Gus stated all along in his previous broadcast, if it comes to name calling and calling each other all kinds of derogatory names, we'll have plenty of support. They'll be all out there supporting you with the name calling, but when it comes to identifying the real enemy and putting them on Front Street, we have a way of retreating and trying to throw bullets at each other instead of at the real enemy that's in front of us.
And the whole thing about it is I was kind of using some, you know, I don't know if this is correct terminology. I just got the code book like 2 days ago. But I was using some so-called politically correct terms and not really being specific in using words like white people, and people were still getting offended.
If you're talking about non-white people who were getting offended by what you're doing, if you get a chance, so I would be interested in hearing, you know, what you wrote down in regards to that. In my experience, non-white people tend to function like the first line of defense for white people. So, you know, I kind of keep that in mind whenever I'm going to be talking to non-white people about anything they got to do with white people being the problem. It's going to trigger, is real apt to trigger the training in non-white people to protect white people. And so you kind of have to factor that in the way you deliver whatever it is you're trying to say, particularly to non-white people, especially black people, but all non-white people, though.
Okay. What do you think is the most effective way in trying to communicate what you're saying?
What I've seen a lot is that if there is a white person around that can, you know, that can be used constructively to assist in what you're trying to communicate about racism, white supremacy, or about white people, it tends to be way more effective for the non-white people to hear a white person saying it. Now, if you don't have any white people around, then you have to, you know, it gets a little more difficult, and you want to. I tend to take baby steps. I tend to take baby steps with black people who I already assume, or I should say, suspect that they're going to be protective about white people.
You have to bring the white person in on what you're doing, because it comes from that leftover slave mentality about the white man's ice is always colder, that black people tend to believe something coming from a white person's mouth because, as Gus said in a previous program that I listened to, we have a way of toning. It could be a white person in the room. Our tone is much softer. It's much muted. It's just one white person. But if it is just us by ourselves, we tend to be loud. We tend to be obnoxious. Because once that white person walks into the room, the whole tone, the whole atmosphere changes.
Oh, excuse me. I'm picking up my daughter. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Can I be heard?
Yes. Oh, glad to hear you, 818.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well.
I wanted to add, I have noticed, and it has made me just feel really sick lately when I see it, but I've noticed, I guess more sensitively, I've been more sensitive to it, but I've noticed lately black people who will bend over backwards and go out of their way to defend and exonerate white people from the role they play, you know, in mistreating black people. And it was one black male in particular. I noticed a black female posted a video on YouTube about identifying as black or African. You know, what are we? Like, what should we call ourselves? This person came out of left field, and he tried to start a discussion on slavery and whose fault it was, and if only Africans hadn't sold us, if only our own people hadn't sold us. You know, that was his thing. And I had heard other black people do this previously, and I found something and was able to reply. And, you know, to say that a lot of those who they say were black people enslaving other people were the rape babies of the Portuguese slavers, as well as other things. But basically, like Mr. Fuller said, without the buyer, there can't be any transactions because the buyer is the most powerful person and therefore has the most responsibility.
Correct.
He went on, and, you know, just it was just bizarre how far he went to try and make it all Africans' fault, even though we can find, you know, like so many records about white people coming and taking black people, whether black people were selling other black people or not. So I posted a few things back, which he couldn't counter. He would just say, oh, you know, you're ignorant or whatever, like I'm bored, whatever. I don't care about what you say, but nothing intelligent. So the very next day, he posted a video, something about Afrocentric idiots or something, but anyone who defends anything regarding black people or will say anything truthful, however negative it may sound, about the role of white people in slavery, he brands them as Afrocentrics, as nutcases, etc. But in this video he put out, I didn't even watch it because I noticed that when I clicked to it, the first image you see is one of those cartoon illustrated images from, like, what is that website, like Stormfront or Chimp Out, where they make black people look really horrific and ugly and like criminals. This is what he used to depict black people starting his video off, and he's a black person.
Are we sure he's a black person? And he's
yeah, he has videos of himself all over YouTube speaking into the camera. He's extremely sick. He's mentally ill. But it was just really disturbing to me to see a black person willing to mistreat other black people to that point and just dedicated to blaming black people for their own condition, but intolerant of anyone who would suggest that white people had anything to do with it. And my point was, you know, while somebody may say if there was no seller, the buyer would have nothing to buy and therefore there would be no buyers, I would say true, but you got to consider the way it started out was not Africans selling Africans. It was Europeans taking them, kidnapping them. And if no African had ever sold another African to a European, the European would have continued taking them, but it was too much risk to them. So for their own sake, they decided to devise a way to get us to work against each other to make their job easier so they could get what they wanted. And they seem to have mastered that.
And what African country became a superpower off of slavery?
Not a one. And also what they leave out is the fact that every African was not sold into slavery. You got the millions who were born here, and not one African put them into slavery, decided they would be slaves, held them as slaves, made up laws to ensure they never had any rights or freedom. So that's why the whole "but you sold your own people" argument and Henry Louis Gates and all his little silliness, it doesn't do anything for me to exonerate the Europeans for the role they played in our Holocaust and our enslavement and mistreatment.
If a non-white person, just real quick, particularly any person, but if a non-white person is not blaming other non-white people for the problems of non-white people, then they are blaming white people. And that's usually the last place we have been trained to go, is to look at white people for causing our problems. So, and on the flip side of that, all kinds of help we get for abusing and degrading black people or non-white people. So, it's just a given. Typically, I take it. If I'm talking to a non-white person or a black person, they're going to be looking for other non-white people to hang all the problems on, because they know if they don't do that, the other side, the next place you got to go is white people, and that's something we dodge.
It's just become really perverse to me, because I guess up until now I hadn't noticed it before. Like, not to this extreme, especially like slavery. You really want to blame African people? For real? Like, just totally, forget about the fact that these people were coming with ship after ship and building kingdoms off of it, and even Australia's probably built up on money from colonizing and enslaving non-white people. Because it's a British property, but I hadn't noticed it before, and I guess the less confused I am, the more it stands out, and the more like monstrous it looks. It's bizarre. I don't think we just got this sick, but I'm just noticing it, I guess.
Does anyone have suggestions for how to deal? Because I think the gentleman or someone asked a question in terms of how to deal with victims that don't want to be truthful about racism, or might get upset and attack you for making a true statement about racism. Did anyone else have suggestions on how to deal with that, or if the victim starts to blame other non-white people for problems, and really to blame anyone but white people for our problems?
Unfortunately, I think the way you've done it and the way that you have suggested it and the other callers suggested is the best way to use that white authority figure, unfortunately. But that way you don't have to take any blame for it. They can't attack you because the white person said it. So then they have to either decide that a white person is a villain and a liar, or they have to consider it and think about it.
Well, part of that too is to be sure to get the white person's permission to, or they're okay that you're about to ask them questions or involve them in a conversation dealing with racism, white supremacy. Because if you skip that step, then the non-white person ends up still jumping to the defense of the white person because they see you going on the attack against them. So
you have to get someone like a Tim Wise, who is known for hanging out there in black radio stations and trying to make himself an honorary black member, and someone like him who is well versed and knows what they're doing, and put them up there, because black people tend to idolize whites like them because they think they are next to Jesus and they can do no wrong. So if they come out and they say it, they will actually take the advice.
I don't think, just in the interest of being correct about terms, I don't think I wouldn't say it's most accurate to say he's trying to be an honorary black person. I think it would be most accurate to say he is most likely practicing very refined racism and confusing black people and getting them to think that he is one of our good white brothers who is definitely not racist and definitely fighting the good fight in the vein of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He is, in fact, the white Martin Luther King Jr. That's what I have been told he said at one of the previous white privilege conferences. I think that's more accurate about what he's doing to describe it, so people are not confused. And I just saw he's giving a speech at a college. It looks like some non-white people who might be confused invited him to come speak for Dr. Martin Luther King's holiday or what have you. I'm going to see if I can get some of them to come on the show to share their thoughts on Tim Wise, what he said, what their views are on white people. Just I think to give us a greater illustration of the impact that he has on confusing non-white people and why we should put him out of business immediately.
What college is he going to be speaking at, or did he speak at?
Let's see. I'll tell you right now. I think it was Central Michigan. Let's see if my memory is holding up. Let's see. I will search. Where is Tim Wise speaking at? Where is Tim Wise? Okay. Tim Wise is speaking at Central Michigan. Yay, Gus. Right on.
Okay.
He was earlier this week. It was a couple days ago, but I'm gonna follow up on the. Go ahead.
Central State.
I didn't understand. What was it?
No, I was asking if it is located in Lansing, because Lansing is a predominantly black area.
I have never been to Michigan, so I'm not sure what city Central Michigan is in. I can find out though, unless someone on the call knows.
Any which way we look at it, these people are making money because it's Jeb Middlebrook that's coming on, and Lisa Marie Rawlings and all of these anti-racist fights that are out here. I don't see what's productive that they have done, because Tim Wise has been out, you said, for over 20 years. I don't see any improvement. These people are making a living off of misleading blacks and other non-whites.
I think
he's been out there for over 20 years. He's been doing this for 20 years.
Yes, sir.
I hadn't even heard of him.
I just heard of him the last maybe year or so.
He's been out there.
Nation blew it up.
And Gus, just to think he's been doing this for 20 years, but when Cree asked him about any compensatory efforts toward Dr. Francis Cress Welsing or Mr. Fuller, he said it would be pointless if all the other white people didn't join in with him. He didn't even want to give 10% to them of his speaking fees, knowing that they wouldn't receive the same type of money that he received speaking, even though they're the ones that developed this.
And using their model.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear either one of you.
I was just going to say that profiting off of the confusion of black people is white supremacy. Timothy Wise is doing that just like everything else in the system of white supremacy is doing that. He's just, skilled at it to come across in a, church-like fashion to appeal to the, what black people typically want to hear. So.
Yeah, and I notice when he's around black people, his speech pattern changes, the cadence of how he's speaking. It's like in mimicking the black preacher style.
Correct. I hear him all the time on the radio. I have XM radio, and he's always on Joe Madison, Mark Thompson, and all of the black hosts. He's always on their program, and they're always giving, Tim Wise is so great. Tim Wise is doing such great things for Tim Wise doesn't have a regular job. Tim Wise's job is to go out here and spread misinformation and make a living. He's doing the same thing that the slave masters they were doing, except now he's still making it off of black people, because you're paying him to come to your churches and schools and whatever else and give these flowery speeches, and it's not doing anything because he's a fan club.
I think the most frustrating thing is when you're talking to these non-white people and they're complaining about this or that, and the problem is white people, but like you said, bring it to their attention, and they're like, "Well, we all just need to love each other." I think a lot of them are under the illusion if we all just become good church folks, or we all go get us a degree, or we all go, that everything will just be all right.
So we all go to church and confess to Jesus, and the Lord will take care of it. Just put it in the Lord's hands and pray about it. He'll take care of it. It makes me so mad, especially my mother-in-law is good for saying that, and I have to walk away sometimes so I would not curse, because she always said, pray about Jesus. Jesus is going to take care of it. Put it in Jesus' hand. And I have to grit my teeth and clench my fist.
Yeah, black people been going to church for how many decades, centuries now? And we still have the same problems.
The Lord going to fix it. The Lord going to show them out. The Lord going to do this for them. I said the Lord ain't showed them out in over 500 years, and they're getting bolder and bolder because they know it's their thing.
But it hurts black people to admit that and to actually have to acknowledge it and think about it. Because then that would mean we have to take some means to a practical solution. And we prefer, I've observed, to be ethereal and mystical with things and not practical. Another popular thing, it seems like it's popular now for black people to go on talking about how black people are their own worst enemies. It's not white people, but black people.
It's true, because I posted on a blog here that's run by this preacher here in Atlanta, and I put on her blog that the tithes and offering that black people are dropping into the collection plate every Sunday, I said that is just for their piece of the fictional real estate that they're hoping to occupy in this place called heaven. It stayed there for about a day, and it came down about the next day. I went back on to post again, and they just took it completely off.
Yeah, because tithing, the way they're teaching tithing today, is absolutely unscriptural, I would say. It's only for the Levitical priesthood. I don't think it was ever money from my studying. It was either animals or livestock. None of those people demanding tithes can prove they're Levites. The Levite priests were male, so the whole thing is twisted. But, yeah, they're going to take that down because that's their income. That's their bread and butter. And they can use the tithe to make people feel guilty. And they'll tell you, they'll read the scripture that says you'll be cursed with the cursed, but they read it out of context. Because the curse they're reading is for not keeping the whole covenant. And they'll tell you, you're not under that covenant. But we have been programmed to believe these things and think and function that way and operate out of fear. They use fear a lot.
And I was listening to one of Pam's older broadcasts from the Trojan Horse, and she mentioned, I believe it was either her or someone else had mentioned about how white people would start identifying themselves as Africans in order to go back in and recolonize the continent. Mm-hmm. And it's true, because I've started hearing on certain shows and certain blogs that they're now referring to themselves, after all, we are descended from Africans, we are part of the family tree, and we have African DNA. And I'm just saying, you know what? These people are trying to put this up again so black people will start feeling comfortable. Say, oh, yeah, they say that they're black, and we all know that they're black anyway. So when they move in for the kill onto the African continent and start displacing those people, they will say, well, we were Africans all along.
And the thing is, they can't point to a single ethnic group in Africa that they come from.
No.
So whatever they were when they left, they aren't those people now, and they couldn't identify them. But, yeah, it is a deceptive trick that they use. And if they were Africans and they considered themselves to be part of one family, they would treat everybody justly. They wouldn't abuse and misuse and try to wipe out the people of Africa and the resources.
Which is why I'm glad that Gus is going to have this man coming on, this gay man that has this black adopted child. It just makes me cringe when I hear it. Because
I didn't say he was gay. I didn't say he was gay. Yeah, I didn't say he was. He might be. I didn't.
He is gay, because I pulled up the article. He is gay.
Oh, okay.
He's a gay white man with that black child, and I saw on the news yesterday, this Florida Supreme Court overruled a decision to strike down a ban that two gay men who were fostering two brothers for 6 years, that they can formally adopt these children. Two black boys that these two gay men had for 6 years, they are allowed to adopt them.
That will definitely be a hoop tomorrow. Make sure you turn in and tune in. Excuse me. He should definitely be asked. I had that on my list. I wanted to ask him if he had sex with another male. So that's one off my list already. Yay. Make sure someone asks if he has had sexual intercourse with a non-white person. If I do not ask, please ask. In fact, the first person whomever, the first person who gets on the line, make that question one. Then if you have, whatever you want to ask, go right ahead. I'll make sure you get, 2 questions. But that should be question 1. Have you had sex with a non-white person? That vital information we should get.
Ask Justice to do that because they tend to let their guard down with children. If Justice was to ask that question, he would not be his defensive would not be up like with an adult.
What do you think, Justice?
Could you say the question one more time? The question that I could ask?
Have you, this is the white gentleman who's coming on the program tomorrow, have you ever engaged in sexual intercourse with a non-white person?
Sure.
All right, there you go. Groovy. That's 2 off my list. I'm already well prepared for the program tomorrow. I can't wait to go and read some of his articles. I'm glad I was super vague because when we're doing programs every day, sometimes I don't get to prep for the program until I'm done with, whatever programs I have before that one. So I'll begin prepping when this program ends. I didn't know the gentleman was also gay. Yes, ma'am.
You're kind of breaking up a little bit.
Oh, no. Briefly, I just said that I didn't know the gentleman was so-called gay. I will enjoy preparing. That'll be something I will look forward to reading and preparing for tomorrow's program. But, yeah, that should be we should have a big problem. Like, everybody who calls in, it should not be, this is our white brother, this is someone who's working against racism. Like, this represents, like, the worst of the worst. Like, you might as well have him in a dress. Like, that's the only way this could go any worse, to have a gay racist with a black male child. And I'm sure Peter Tatchell should be in your mind. I hope, proud gay black man, I hope you are listening. You can add this to your list of programs where they are connecting so-called homosexuality with pedophilia. That should be in your mind. Is this racist man fondling, sexually molesting this black male? That should be heavily on your mind. Like, think of that. Watch Heading South tonight, so you'll be in the correct frame of mind. We should be ready to roll tomorrow. Because these folks, this is Racism, White Supremacy, 2013. Right before you, Mr. Fuller, when I spoke with him yesterday, he said this. You're just seeing the tip of the iceberg of where this sexual deviance is headed.
I saw Heading South about 2 nights ago, and yes, I was so glad I saw that movie to see a 47-year-old white female molested the child, I believe he was 15 years old at the time, Legba. And she said she had her first orgasm with this child. Oh, no. And it's been coming back to Haiti ever since. Her and a whole bunch of white women coming to these hotels with these children, taking advantage of them. It was sickening. And at the end, you see her calling off all the different islands that she would next be traveling to in the Caribbean in order to exploit these children.
Did anybody see that documentary? I think it was Rena Rasta. And one thing I think I remember from that documentary was one of the white females, one of the racist women on that video blaming the men, claiming that the men were the ones pursuing the white women and seducing them, even though she had said they went down there for sex. Like they were trying to put the responsibility on the black males who they came down there to seek.
Victims' faults, once again. The other people that raised their hand, your lines are open. 3358 and 5301, your lines are open.
Yes, that must be me. Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
The Central Michigan is in northern part, just probably near Flint, Michigan. If you guys have a map, it's around that area.
I looked it up. Everybody was talking. Oh, and Lisa Marie Rollins, she is not white. Lisa Marie Rollins is not white. She was adopted by white people, but she is a non-white female. Central Michigan. It's in what is it called? Mount something?
Oh,
Mount Pleasant.
Clemens.
Mount Pleasant.
Yeah, Mount Pleasant. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's where it is. Anyway, now that we got all that, did you want to share anything, sir?
Most of it was already, I believe, covered because you guys are fans now. I'm your fan. The way they made this into a almost like a soap opera, but it is. I've been listening to from the first episode, so I'm glad to hear you guys at least address a serious issue. But when the I think it was a proud gay guy, something like that, made a statement about how you guys became like characters, how you guys are talking about becoming characters, I can see exactly what he's talking about. It's real easy to get involved with listening because you guys do so well with allowing each other to be heard. And then you really touch on points that nobody really ever really touches on and stay focused on. Not even Joe Madison. He'll focus on a little bit, but he'll move right on because it's whenever you get into a point on Joe Madison's show, they got to go to commercial. So you can never really stay focused, and that's why I like this show. And it was genius too, as well, to bring a child on board and have the child ask questions. That was genius right there. I got to take my hat off to that one. So yeah, I've been hooked ever since I first heard you guys, but I haven't been able to really listen to a live episode until now. So keep up the good work, and I'm gonna continue supporting you guys.
Appreciate it. I guess if you can, afternoon shows are good for you. You should be able to tune in tomorrow, perhaps as well, because we'll be on the same time tomorrow. If you're interested, Nope.
I'll try to. I usually like listening to the archive. When it's archived, that way when I miss something important, I can just go right back to it. What did he just say? And then it helps me catch it a lot easier. I was aware of things, but you guys really heightened my awareness. And now my wife is like, okay, it's a little too much now. When I start pointing stuff out, but if it's there, it's there. So.
Is she receptive? When you point those things out?
She hasn't even. I tried to get her to listen to some of the shows. I think I got her listening to the Francis Isis Welton and the Neely Fuller first. Get her listening to the concept, and she is receptive. It took me about 10 years, but I finally got her receptive.
Persistence, I dig it.
but she's receptive now, So, but yeah, she's more aware. I was trying to get my child involved too, but I haven't downloaded anything for her to listen to yet. But that's just a technology issue there, trying to get to her little iPod thing.
How old is your child?
I think the same age as Justice there, 13.
Oh, okay. You should bring her on the show.
Yeah, I talked to her about it, but to set it up, I guess we would have to get on. You say you go through Skype, right?
I do. You can use a phone, but if you have Skype, that would work too.
I want her to listen to when the children got on and they all talked. So when I get that to her thing, then she can see what level of mindset she has to be on. She's already up there, very observant, but she's still white identified. Okay, so and until you work them out of that issue of white identified, it's a tough thing to deal with when your daughter want to date white boys or whatever. So I still, so we still got to work out that issue there.
You know what? I was just thinking yesterday about growing up and being white identified, not to where I thought everything white was wonderful, but I just thought back at around that age and younger, let's say like 11 to 12, 13, how many crushes I had on different white boys or white men through media and things that I was exposed to. And I think now, before she gets to the age where she's seriously starting to think about dating, I think it is really important to talk to her about why and to bring it to her attention in a subtle way, maybe through questioning, but ask her, which white guys do you like or have a crush on? Why? What is it about them that you find attractive? Maybe compare that to her thoughts about non-white males, and then ask her where it comes from, or how did someone show you this? Did you see something that made you think these people were attractive? But to kind of bring it to her attention through asking her questions and getting her to think about what she's observed, and to run it through her own mind to get her to speak about it and come to the realization that it's programming. Because I just had to really think about it. I mean, I was in a phase where I had crushes on the guys in the Monkees. At this stage, they were grown men, but I was constantly watching the Monkees from back in the 60s on TV, even on the Tiger Beat magazines. They had them on the cover, what they looked like as teenagers in the 60s.
Right.
They were keeping this stuff out there. Now you got the whole Justin Bieber mania, all these shows targeted
Twilight.
Yeah, and all those shows targeted
all over the
people
wall.
her age with white guys.
I pretty much had to pay her to take something down, something, put a black person on the wall. And when me and my wife talked about putting black people on the wall, then we had to sit back and wonder, okay, who do we approve that she can replace the white people with? And Nicki Minaj, I'm like, ooh, no.
You just may have to find some old Essence magazines and pull out models to make a big collage.
They definitely have not made it easy for us to have really any decent idols to look forward to that are at least bamboozling their way on the TV screen.
Are located in?
Say that again, please.
What part of the country are you located?
We're in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Is it a mixed area, or is it more white than it is black?
We are under the rule of DeVos. When you guys talked about DeVos before, we are the grand rule of DeVos and his party of conservative folk. So it's a small number of black folk. Let's just put it this way: we don't have a black radio station.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
One of the things your wife is going to have to start talking to her daughter is, as you said, you're listening to the program. Get her to identify with her blackness, because you don't want to breed yourself out of existence because of the rate that she is going. If she's identifying with white and she's talking about dating white boys, then she doesn't have a concept of what it is about her black culture or about herself and her parents. Doesn't she like her black mother, her father? And y'all might need to sit down and just have a talk to her about it and let her know the contributions that Black has made to society, the different inventions, Nat Turner, Harriet Tubman, all of these great people in Black history, so that she could start identifying with them and not the George Washington and the Abraham Lincoln who were slave owners.
Yeah, we did that. She knows exactly who all those people are, and yet this still happened. Like I said, it's a tragedy. We emotion. Well, my wife told me about it because, see, her little sister told on her, see. You know. So, but, hey, it's something that it'll work itself out, hopefully. We'll just keep pushing.
Get her on the show.
Stressing it.
Get her on the show. Get her on the show. That would be great. We can maybe help codify something. If your child gets white identified, how to break that so they will never, ever, ever, ever have sex with a white person.
Hey, you know, I used to live out there where you was at, too. Out there. I used to live in Kent, Washington, for about 7 years before I moved back. So I know exactly what you're talking about with that area. And,
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Gus, are we going to talk about the Beyonce thing?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, wow. We were actually, it was not we. Justice was doing her schoolwork. And, yeah, you can take it from there. You were doing your schoolwork. You want to tell them what you were studying and read what was in your schoolwork?
Yeah, there's, on my history lesson, well, of course, they tell a lot of lies in my history lessons. And when I was doing history, it was because I was doing a review on history, and so they had this game. And so on one of them, it said, it simmered up the sounds of New Orleans and was richly flavored with a little of Africa, a little of Europe, a little spiritual, and a healthy sprinkling of talent. And, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask if you could read that last two sentences one more time, just so people could make sure they hear what you read.
It simmered up the sounds of New Orleans and was richly flavored with a little of Africa, a little of Europe, a little spiritual, and a healthy sprinkling of talent. That was for my history lesson. And if you want to see the game, I can send it to you, but I might not be able to because it's on,
What were your thoughts when you read that passage? What did you think about, or what did it make you think of?
That that white people is like white people stole Africa. Pretty much. So.
She, Justice, read that passage, and she shared. She said, look at this. Look what was in my history work. And when I heard it, I said, that sounds sexual, in my opinion. It sounds very sexualized, and it sounds like they're talking about white people and non-white people, black people specifically, having sexual intercourse. And she said New Orleans. And I said, that's what they are infamous for. These brothels and having the whole Creole so-called Creole population. Like, that's a big part of New Orleans history. I mean, you even see all that sexual debauchery. That's what Mardi Gras is all about in New Orleans. And I said, in fact, because we were having this discussion, I believe, yesterday, and I said, in fact, we were just talking about Beyonce and single ladies. I said, Beyonce is from there. And I think Tater Pie shared that was the way they marketed Beyonce, saying she was Creole and all this other stuff. And so I told Justice, I said, you should go do some research and see where she was born. I bet Beyonce was born in Louisiana. And she went to research. What did you find, Justice?
Let's see. I went to answers.com and I typed in Beyonce born. And let's see. It says born for September 4th, 1981. Birthplace, Houston, Texas. Best known as singer of single ladies. Put a ring on it. Name at birth, Beyonce Knowles. Do you want me to read any more?
I think that's good. I think the rest will probably be just other frivolous info. But at first, I was a bit chagrined, like, oh man, I was incorrect. I thought that she was going to be born, that she was born in Louisiana. Turns out she was born in Houston, Texas. And I was like, oh, man, I was wrong. And I said, wait a minute. Houston is really close to Louisiana. And in fact, I have driven, literally, I have driven from New Orleans to Houston. And I said, they're pretty close. I said, in fact, if, we remember Hurricane Katrina, a lot of the so-called refugees went to Houston because it's very close. You could drive there pretty quick. And we continued to dig. It turned out that not one, but both of Beyonce Knowles' parents born in Louisiana. And I took a slight bow on that one. Thank you. But I thought that was, a great way you can use your children's educational experience to learn about racism. And I just thought that was a great little moment. Racism in the textbooks and spilling out into some of the conversations we've been having on the program about Beyonce. Did you want to tell them about the corn, or did you have other parts to that story? Did I leave something out?
Oh, the corn. Hold on just 1 second, because the corn is it's a book, so I have to go get it really fast. So hang on.
Right on.
Okay.
Gus, can you define Creole for me?
I think I did say so-called Creole. That's what I have been told these people are referenced as, so-called Creole. I have no idea. To the best of my knowledge, it is some white people and non-white people having sexual intercourse, and that having some significance for generations hereafter. That's the best sense I can make of it. But no, I would not be the best person to ask about what the term Creole means.
It's a little confusing to me, because when I took a Black History class, at one point we learned it was the children of either French or Spaniards in that area with either African or Native women. But then I know it's used culturally, too, and I've had people that are the same complexion as my grandfather who didn't have any white parents, and they identify as Creole, and they're from that area. So I wasn't sure if it was cultural or another word for a person with a white parent or what.
I don't use that term. Keep it as simple as possible. White, non-white, keep it very simple. That word, it'll have you running for days. White people will have published, 8,000 books about what the term Creole means and how it's changed, and they'll have you, chasing that forever.
I think I've heard Beyonce's mother say that either she or her parent, or one of her parents at least, or her people were Creole, but I haven't heard it defined.
Me either. the corn book?
Okay, I got it now.
Okay.
Let's see. This book is by Gail Gibbons, and if you want to share with your children and talk and pick out the racism in it, that would help them, I bet, understand racism, white supremacy. In this book, it has white people, which they call them in this book pilgrims, and they show the Indians, the so-called Native American Indians, helping the pilgrims how to grow corn, and like there's corn stalks and they have it's just showing. Oh yeah, and they have like a Thanksgiving feast with the white people, and they help them try to pick corn, and in this book it just shows how the so-called Indians helped the white people. I mean, and they don't show the white people, I don't think, in here doing anything to help them out. But Indians help the white people.
Justice. Do you remember there was a guest on the show, Mbwebe, I think it's Ishange from the Ghetto Times? Do you remember him?
Mhm.
If you go to his website, he did an article on Thanksgiving, and it came from this book. I think it's called What They Didn't Teach You in Your History Class. And in that book, I was even, in what he took from the book, I was surprised to learn that white people actually, they had it written, they don't teach us this. But not too long after the so-called pilgrims came, I think out of maybe a group of 50 of them or so, the man that was writing said about 6 of them were in their right minds, like the rest of them had gone insane. When it got to the point that they were starving and didn't know where they were going to get food from, they actually resorted to cannibalism and ate some dead Native Americans. And there was
that's just gross.
Yeah, there was one chief that killed his wife to eat her. These are things they won't teach us because they want to make us think that these were some, like perfect Christian people and to look at them as heroes. Yeah, the natives fed them, and then they turned around later on and committed genocide and killed them and ate some of them.
Jeffrey Dahmer.
Oh,
yeah. Excuse me, what book is that?
I think it's called What They Didn't Teach You in Your History Class, but if you go to theghettotimes.com, ghetto, TYMZ.com, and look for his Thanksgiving articles. It might be called Thanksgiving, but if you look them up, posted this past November 2010, you'll find the article, and as you scroll down, he'll post things from it, and it'll give you the author's name. It cites the sources there.
He's linked on the show page too, the Cow show page, the Ghetto Times. If you look in the links, it might be, if you missed that or what have you, can click from the show page to get to his website. And yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Can I also ask, has anyone out there been watching the Oprah Winfrey Show this week while she's in Australia? And if you have, how does it make you feel in the context of white supremacy, knowing what you know?
When I watched her today, a little bit of her today, jumping up and down, happy to be in Australia, telling people to come to Australia, the first thing I thought about was the movies I saw, The Rabbit Fence. Anybody seen that?
Rabbit Proof. Yeah.
Oh, the
yes,
Rabbit
sir.
Proof Fence. Oh my God, that's what popped in my head. I'm like, I don't know what she's so happy about, but that just kept popping in my head.
Did you feel like?
What was the other one?
Did you feel like the show promoted?
Australia is the other one.
And she referenced that yesterday on the show. She referenced that she saw that movie.
Wow.
I
just came in and watched her jumping up and down saying, come to Australia. And I was pretty much preoccupied with something else.
Did you get a feeling at all that she was white identified?
Well, I looked at her whole audience. I said, man, everybody's white. I didn't see no black people in the audience. So
there were a few black people
that's
she
enough
brought
white
down
identification
there.
for me.
Well, she brought a few black people down there. Some of her ultimate viewers, there were a few of them that were black, but it was mostly white. But what I watched, I couldn't get happy about it. I thought Australia is an absolutely beautiful place, like just the natural landscape alone. But I noticed how much white people had built up there, and normally you don't get to see it, but it really did push the message to me that white people are the most attractive people. Not saying I think they're the most beautiful, but attractive as far as you would, if you were less confused, you would easily look at them and think they were the best people on earth. I just looked at all the things they have built down there, but in my mind I'm thinking all of this is land they took by committing genocide and murdering and committing brutality against non-white people. And it was either yesterday or the day before, they actually went to one of the so-called Aboriginal lands, and there's this big, I think it's called, not Uhuru, it's something similar to that though. And their tour guide she looked like she had an Aboriginal mother probably and a white parent, one of the kind of in-between people that had like a mulatto type look or skin color. So she was the tour guide, and Oprah and a bunch of the females from her audience that went with her, they went to observe a traditional dance of the women that are native to so-called Australia. In a way, I don't know, it kind of felt like, those things where white people sit around and observe the customs of the natives, like we keep a few of them around to remind you who we took the land from. But I don't know, it was just bizarre, but kind of like a slap in the face. I didn't feel happy watching it. I felt kind of sad because it was a reminder of what white people have been able to accomplish and get done by mistreating and or abusing and or killing non-white people and taking things from them. It was a magnificent show, but it's a show of the results of non-justice and incorrectness.
I think you're going to see that more often because of what happened at the Olympics when the China Olympics and the Chinese showed their custom and their, just their beauty and the way they do things. And when Canada had the Olympics where they were, the Winter Olympics, what did Canada have to do? They had to pull the Indians off the shelf and help, to show that they got custom. And now that's what you see down there in Australia. The same thing. Hey, look, we got black people here too. We got custom.
Do you think it's really, white people showing off?
What's custom there? Say it again.
Do you think it's white people showing off their, their trophies, their non-white trophies? Like, look, we still got remnants of those who we've conquered, and like that, like those people give some legitimacy to their empires.
I think that's what they have to go to show everybody, to one up everybody else, because you know how the United States got to be the best. I'm just wondering what do the United States do that everybody else is pulling out? Trying to pull out some kind of customary say, what will they do to equal out the balance and say, we have culture here too?
Barack Obama, maybe?
I wanted to hop in really quick. We have like 3 minutes left in the program. We will be back tomorrow. The Showtime early show again tomorrow. 11 a.m. Pacific, so early show. If you're on the East Coast, Showtime tomorrow is 2 p.m. in the afternoon, 1 p.m. Central. Apparently, we will not just be having a white person who has adopted a black male. Apparently, we will be having a so-called homosexual white person who has adopted a black male child. Mr. Terry Calhair. He'll be on the program tomorrow. Very much looking forward to having him on the program. Justice will be asking him if he's had sex with a non-white person. Should be great. Share the program, tune in, call. Looking forward to it. Also wanted to share a listener, he emailed this response where he said that he was striving to be a universal man. And he said that it's better to have a system of justice rather than a system of racism, white supremacy. And this is what the white person said. I think it's important to seek one's roots, to have a sense of self in this ever-changing world. It's hard to be you when you don't even know what you came from. I personally think multiculturalism and religion are the roots to all the problems in the modern world. It's easy to want to grow into something bigger, but by doing that, you lose your sense of self and you can't go against human nature. The true fact is that all of us are still in tribal mode, and there is no way to get rid of that without getting rid of your humanity. Nature is evil. We are evil. Good is something we invented to try to separate ourselves from Mother Earth. This existence is survival of the fittest, Darwin. If you want to stay, you need to fight for it. Most white people think they are the problem and they feel guilty. I think we need to keep our power over the world, and I think it'll stay that way whether you like it or not. I'm speaking the truth. Justice doesn't win. Only greatness wins. End quote, said the white man racist. We'll be back tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern.